You are listening to A Scary State, and this week we're covering Kansas. So, Lauren?
Yes, Nora?
Let's get scary.
Hello, everyone.
Hello!
Do we have anything to talk about before this episode starts?
Please give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, because it means so much. Every time we get another review, we freak out and get so excited. So
and
please.
send screenshots to each other. So
yes.
Keep
Exactly.
doing it. So I guess without further ado, we'll just jump on into it.
Yay.
So Kansas, nicknamed the Sunflower State, joined the Union on January 29th, 1861, and became the 34th state. So side note, sunflowers are my absolute favorite flower.
Aww.
I have so many sunflower things, like my computer case.
Yeah.
Like my badge, my work badge, just all the sunflowers. So Kansas got its name from the Kansas Indians who, in the English language, were known as the people of the South Wind. Their official state reptile is the ornate box turtle. I had to throw that in for my mom, so there you go. Some weird laws. Single men between the ages of 21 and 50 are required to pay an annual tax of $1.
What? How much do they get? Not any money at all. That's so pointless.
Yeah. If you want to shave while driving, you will need a permit. And on Sundays between the hours of 11:50 a.m. and 12:48 p.m., you are not allowed to eat clam chowder.
Well, I don't like clam chowder, so I like that law.
I love clam chowder.
So Ian likes it too.
Or how Joe says it, clam chowder.
Chowder.
He's from Massachusetts. There are about 528 caves located in Kansas. Who would have thought? Who would have thought?
I would never think of that.
One of the most paranormally active houses, the Sally House, is located in Atchison. The Sally, okay. BuzzFeed Unsolved, paranormal. Or supernatural, unexplained. I don't know. BuzzFeed Unsolved, there's these two awesome guys and they go investigate haunted places and they go to the Sally House. It is so freaking creepy. So when you get a chance, watch it. It's really, really cool.
Okay.
In the town of Gypsum, Don Meyer Road is said to be haunted. So a group of teens were driving too fast on this road one day and ended up crashing, killing everyone in the car. That smashed car is still on that road today to serve as a grisly reminder. It has been named the Devil's Washboard. It is also said that if you are on this road at night, you'll hear the screams and cries of those who were killed in that crash.
Wow. They used to put cars that were destroyed by, or where drunk drivers died in them, people who were driving drunk. They would put the messed up car outside of our high school with a story saying how they died.
Oh my gosh.
It was so sad.
Really?
Yeah.
Because we went to close high schools.
Yeah.
Ew.
Maybe because it was different counties.
Maybe.
I don't know, but...
Stoll Cemetery is said to house one of the 7 gateways to hell. There is a set of hidden steps that lead to the underworld. A hidden seal is what shows the location of these steps, and it only appears on Halloween and on the spring equinox. The Devil's Chair is located in the middle of Alma Cemetery. The story goes that a farmer was being asked to sell his property and he kept refusing. One day, as he was at the well on his property, someone came up behind him and pushed him in. He died. No one noticed, but they did notice a horrible smell coming from the well, so they boarded it up. It is now said that if you sit on this boarded up well, known as the Devil's Chair, you will never be seen again. I know, they have a lot of these weird little urban legends.
And very specific.
Right. And Kansas has 4 identified serial killers. So Nora, for Kansas, what are you telling us about?
Okay. So I'm going to talk about the Kansas State, aka K-State, because that's what they call themselves. Hauntings.
K-State.
Yeah, K-State. So K-State is located in Manhattan, Kansas, not Manhattan, New York, because this is our Kansas episode. It opened its doors in 1863 and was the first public institution of higher learning in the state of Kansas. Given that the school is over 150 years old, it has a number of reported hauntings.
Naturally.
The first is in the Delta Sigma Pi Fraternity house. This is believed to be occupied by more than just its frat boy members. Ghosts have been said to haunt the halls of the house since 1955, when the old St. Mary's Hospital moved from its location on Fremont Street to a new building in Manhattan, which is where the frat house is today. The members of Delta Sigma Pi claim there are 2 ghosts who live in the house. George Siegel, a former hospital patient, that's who it is, a former hospital patient. Wow. A former hospital patient, and an entity known only as the nurse. There is no direct relationship between the 2 ghosts, but their whereabouts in the house have been documented by previous members of the fraternity who have allegedly encountered them.
Ew.
Yeah. Bedrock Values is a book by a guy named Lauren Mall, who is a Delta Sigma Pi alum, and he wrote this book, and it contains the history of Kansas State chapter of Delta Sigma Pi, and it includes a chapter about the ghosts there.
And his name was Lauren?
Yeah.
How does he spell it?
Loren.
I knew there was a guy version of Lauren.
Yeah.
Or a male version?
Male. Yeah. Exactly.
I don't know. Whatever is the correct way to say that.
Yeah.
To be inclusive.
Yeah, exactly. Matt Mindrup, who was in the frat as well and studying biology, shared an excerpt from the Bedrock Values about George's background. It reads, George was a patient at St. Mary's Hospital in the early 1950s. He was bedridden and could not speak. One night, George fell off his bed and was pinned between the wall and the bed frame.
Oh.
Yeah. As the hospital made its transition from the Fremont Place to the new Manhattan location, the hospital staff was checking all the rooms and making sure all the patients were moved out. When checking George's room, they didn't see anyone and assumed that he had already been moved. George died later that night.
Aww.
I know.
What horrible organization or like record keeping.
I know. They would know that someone's been there. Someone's been taking care of George. Like,
Yeah,
where did George
you
go?
would think like, oh, okay, Sally Sue went out of her room, check.
Exactly.
Michael John, check. George? No.
Exactly. And I know for a fact they had a pen and paper back then. They could have been taking record. The book also mentions how George really liked Star Trek. An ice storm in the 1960s knocked out the power to the whole neighborhood, but every Tuesday at 4 p.m., the electricity would come on in the house and reruns of Star Trek would play.
Aw.
Yeah, even when the electricity was out.
Oh, wait, I love that.
I know. Matt Mindrup added, what's weird about it is that no other houses would have electricity. So it just happened to the frat house.
That is weird.
Yeah. The members quickly found out that George's love for Star Trek meant he had a hatred for Star Wars. Mitch Byers, who was studying secondary education, said, quote, I was told last year a member brought a lightsaber for a date party costume, and that night he heard a huge crash. It was his lightsaber broken on the other side of the room.
Oh. Wait, that's actually really funny.
I know. That's hilarious. The TV's on.
Is it that TV? Did it just turn on?
Yeah.
Is he not even in there?
No. I'm so freaked out.
So Nora is trying to find the remote. We're like in the middle of her talking about how in the frat house the lights would randomly turn on. So we're talking about it and all of a sudden the TV turns on in the living room. We're recording in the kitchen. And her boyfriend Ian is upstairs like not even listening to us because we called his name and it didn't answer. And now she can't find the remote and we can't turn the TV off and we have no idea how it turned on. Nora, your house is haunted.
What the heck?
We just had to spend time looking for the remote because we couldn't find it.
I literally, in my mind, thought that Ian came down here and turned on the TV, like, to mess with us. And I was like, that's not funny. Like, turned it on, like, just, what the heck? It just turned on again.
Oh my God, Nora.
Oh my God, stop. Over there. And it kept turning on to the channel it was showing something called In and Out of Hell.
And then, okay, so Ian just actually turned it off and unplugged it, so we'll see how this goes with the
God.
TV. Oh, my ribs
I
hurt.
am freaking out
I'm
right now.
so scared.
Okay. Matt Mindrup. He said, he is a good ghost. People think he liked to bowl, so members hear a bowling ball out on the third floor at night, and they'll go out and look and won't see anything, and they really only hear it from George's room. Jake Mcintyre, who studied kinesiology at K-State, also had a chilling encounter when he lived in the Delta Sigma Pi fraternity house. He shared, quote, one time I got up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, and there was a recliner at the end of the hallway. I thought I saw someone rocking in it, but when I looked back, they were gone. It was 3 a.m, so everyone was asleep. End
Nope.
quote. It's been 50 years since the hauntings started in the halls of Delta Sigma Pi, but it doesn't appear George is going anywhere anytime soon. Fraternity, I know.
I want him to stay.
Fraternity members, well, he's not going anywhere anytime soon.
Yeah, I want him to stay.
I know, me too. Fraternity members currently living in the house continue to have unexplainable occurrences. Mitch Byers, who told the lightsaber story earlier, said, quote, in the room right next to me, across from George's room, once or twice a week, they will hear footsteps go across the room. It's really weird. It's creepy, end quote.
That would be creepy.
Yeah. The other ghost that is said to reside in the Delta Sigma Pi house is simply referred to as the nurse. According to legend, she was on the 3rd floor and was going to take a cart down to the 1st floor. She pressed the button for the elevator and opened the gate. She backed in. Oh my God, I forgot this was in here. She backed in, thinking the elevator was there.
Oh God.
But instead fell down the elevator shaft and died.
Oh God.
It's like your worst nightmare.
So there's a haunted elevator immediately.
Exactly. Current members say that while George stays on the 3rd floor, the nurse roams the house.
Oh.
She particularly likes to haunt a hallway they call Nurse's Hall. Cody Ulich, who studied biology at K-State, says, quote, Nurse's Hall is probably the creepiest part of the house, especially at night, end quote.
I would imagine.
Yeah. Mitch Byers shared a story he heard about a time when their house mom, Barb Holst, was decorating the house for the holidays and all the members were out studying or taking finals, so she was the only one home. Holst heard screaming, but no movement up or down the steps. When the nurse died, it had been said she screamed all the way down.
Ugh.
While the idea of ghosts being in the house may seem unsettling, many of the frat members have learned to live with it.
Good for them.
Yeah.
The part where you said the rocking chair, my brother went to go stay with one of his friend's grandparents, and the room they were in, he said, had a rocking horse. And he was like, I'm not about to see that thing rock in the middle of the night, so he tipped it on its side.
Oh my gosh, that's funny.
He was like, that way I keep it from rocking.
Yeah, for real. Matt Mindrup kind of summed it up by saying, quote, it doesn't really bother me because you don't think about it until something weird happens, end quote. Which is true, but also, like, I would always be on the defense.
I would always think, like, when am I going to hear something?
Exactly. With strange noises, flickering lights, and other paranormal activities, the majority of fraternity members say they believe ghosts do exist within the walls of Delta Sigma Pi, even if they haven't had their own personal encounters with them. Mitch Byers says, quote, I 100% believe there are ghosts in the house. I would love to encounter them. That would be a really cool story.
Yeah, that would be.
It would, yeah.
I don't know how well you and I would handle it, apparently.
I know, right? Freak out.
Oh my God.
The second haunted place at K-State is one that many K-State students are apparently really familiar with. So we would love to hear from you if you attended school there and experienced anything.
Oh, please.
I really want to hear. But the location is in the Purple Mask Theater in the school's World War I Memorial Stadium. The theater was originally a dorm for the football athletes, but was converted in the 1960s and has been haunted just as long. The legend is of Nick the Ghost, the spirit who supposedly haunts the Purple Mask Theater. A Collision article from August 1987, and I quote them a lot because they have a lot of details from accounts, but they report that Nick the Poltergeist, as he's also called, was first noticed in 1964. The ghost was thought to be a former football player from the 1950s who had been injured during practice and was taken to an old cafeteria underneath the stadium where he died.
Oh.
Yeah. It is said that he now waits for his parents who died in a car crash on their way to see him play.
Stop.
I know. What a tragedy.
Oh, I hate that.
Yeah. Since then, students have claimed to see a white, hazy shadow lurking behind curtains or a presence that knocks equipment over during late-night rehearsals or mysteriously slams doors. One time, actors were in the theater at the stadium and heard footsteps echoing and pacing back and forth above the actors' heads. They stared fearfully at the ceiling, and a girl asked, quote, is somebody up there? I thought no one was allowed. Another girl responded, oh, that's just Nick. Don't mind him.
That first girl sounds kind of like a Karen in the making.
Yeah.
I thought that wasn't allowed.
I know, right? No one's allowed up there. The footsteps continued for half an hour and then faded away. When the actors went upstairs to make sure no one was there, they discovered the footsteps had originated from a locked room. Apparently, though, the story of Nick and his parents wasn't true, like as far as how he died and his parents.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. So there was a record of a football player named Nick, but he didn't die on campus. However, the Kenzie Career reported on July 27, 2001, that 2 people did die in the 1950s there. On August 27, 1951, a football player named Robert Mayer died of polio before the first football practice of the season. And on October 14, 1953, John M. Holden died after a midair collision with another player during an intramural football game. However, that didn't take place at the East Stadium. And side note, I'm glad helmets and protective gear have come a long way, but football's still really dangerous. the mental effects it can have, like from hitting your head.
yeah.
Even if you don't actually die, like it still damages it. So
Well, it's like concussions; those aren't good for you, and then traumatic brain injury and things like that. Yeah.
And I feel like there's like this ideology drilled in your head that's like, keep going, work through the pain, you know, keep going. And it's like, okay, but that can literally mess people up.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But many think that the tale of those 2 football players who really did die discredits the Nick theory, on top of the fact that many sources say the Nick theory isn't true. So they're saying, like, I don't know, there's just like conflicts about if it's true or not. But in a Collision article from November 1st, 2007, Lloyd Auerbach, director of the Office of Paranormal Investigations, which is so cool, at the school, he was quoted saying, "Ghosts do not haunt where they died. They go back to a place they like. They go home, a place they love."
Aww.
Yeah. So apparently, according also to the Collision, when contacted by a Ouija board, Nick said he was 19 years old, the same age as Holden when he died, who was the one football player who did die. Dwight Toller, assistant professor in acting, said he had experiences with Nick since he was a student at K-State. Professor Toller said that he does believe Nick existed, he just isn't sure if Nick exists now. He added that when he was a senior, students held a seance in the Purple Mask. A Collision reporter went along. However, Toller said that the full details were never printed. The reporter had taken a tape recorder with her into the mask. The tape was functioning well both before and after she entered the theater, but not for the period of time that she was within the mask.
Ew.
Yeah. Professor Toller said that when they looked at the tape, it was all jumbled, just for the space that she was in the mask. All jumbled tape.
Ew.
During the seance, the students locked all the doors in the theater and began by asking Nick to appear. Pipes started banging, and they heard footsteps coming from the rooms above the theater and around the ramps backstage. Then, just as suddenly as the noises began, they stopped. So fast forward, Professor Toller, now a professor, decided to spend the night there with a few of his fellow students, which is like cool, but also like kind of weird.
Well, I feel like in college it's a lot different.
Yeah, that's true.
Like one of our teachers, they held like study sessions. Like they were like, if you guys need a quiet place to study, our house is available. If you need a quiet place to sleep, you can sleep here.
Oh, that's really nice.
They were the best teachers ever. Like the best professors.
That's good.
But yeah, I feel like in high school, like that'd be really weird.
Yeah,
but in college,
high school, yeah.
I mean, like I studied abroad, and one of our teachers was like, if you guys want a place to stay, like you guys can come early and you can stay in the place I'm renting.
That's so nice.
My friend and I went. We stayed on her couch for a couple of days until our class started.
That is so awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's very true.
Yeah. So I think it's a lot less creepy the older you get.
When they were awakened in the middle of the night by the same noises as before, the professor Toller, he sprinted up the stairs to catch the culprit. He saw a shadowy figure at the top of the stairs and yelled, "Gotcha." He said, "I swear I saw someone duck behind one of the pillars there, and all the doors were padlocked. It was a shadowy figure, looked like someone dart into the room," end quote.
Ew.
But no one was there.
Ew. I hate that.
He went back downstairs. Everyone had heard what happened, and they told him that when he yelled, the noises stopped. So needless to say, they chose to spend the rest of the night somewhere else. They all left.
I don't blame them.
Paranormal investigators have gone to the Purple Mask in search of activity. According to an October 31st, 2005 Collegiate article, one said that he felt the spirit of an aggressive farmer named Nigel from before the East Stadium was built. Another article from 1985 told of a woman who said she felt a presence inside the theater. When she walked into the box room, she ran screaming from the building. She then warned all theater faculty never to enter the Purple Mask alone, claiming that something evil was in there. Diana Watts, who studied theater performance at K-State, had her fair share of experiences with Nick. Diana said that during her first year at K-State, she would hear footsteps coming down the stone staircase from the upstairs hallway. She could see the top of the landing, but there wasn't anyone up there. She called and no one answered. The footsteps stopped for a few seconds and then came toward her, so she ran. Another instance occurred when she was doing a lunchtime show. While answering questions from the audience with all the cast and crew members, the heavy curtain that used to be in the main entrance to the stage started sliding back and forth by itself. Diana said it was really heavy, maybe 30 pounds, and they all watched it move. Diana said she believes Nick is a friendly ghost and he's a prankster who wouldn't hurt anyone.
Oh,
which I kind of agree with, because there's so many of these stories and not one person got injured or anything.
Okay.
Matthew Harrison, who studies mass communications at K-State, said he's hesitant to believe in Nick. He thinks there's a possibility, but he just doesn't 100% know. He says that, for all we know, it could be Nick the Demon or Nick the Invisible Cheese. I read that and I was like, what does that mean?
I think he was trying to make a point.
Yeah.
But I don't think the point stuck.
I know. I was like, I read it like 5 times. I'm like, did I miss something? So there was another professor. So the third professor, who she was an associate professor in theater. Her name is Charlotte McFarland, and she has been with K-State for 31 years. While nothing has happened to her in her long time there, she has had experiences with Nick in the past. She said that she's had enough weird experiences and students have been to her house in tears. Professor McFarland didn't believe in ghosts until shortly after she began working at K-State in the early 1980s when Nick convinced her. She was doing a show at the time when the mask had no back doors. The doors leading inside were locked for privacy. Suddenly, in the middle stage entrance, the silhouette of a man appeared. She said, I didn't think it was a ghost. I was just mad. There wasn't supposed to be anyone there. She asked what he was doing there, and the actress turned and saw it. They screamed and flew to the opposite corner of the stage. When the silhouette moved away, Professor McFarland ran to the back of the stage to intercept it, but no one was there. Both doors were still locked. The next morning, Professor McFarland was telling her class what had happened when she called out, but you know what, Nick? I still don't believe in you and you don't scare me. Uh-oh. And then the lights above her burst.
Well, that's what you get.
Yeah.
Don't say you don't believe the ghost.
Yeah. She said, it changed my whole perception of spirituality. After that, I couldn't go into the mask until at least 2 other people showed up. Do I think he's like demonic or harmful? No, he doesn't hurt people, but he'll mess with people.
That's fun.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of fun.
It is. It's like, if you disrespect him, then he'll just mess with you a little.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that's the story of Kansas State, K-State hauntings.
Very cool.
Yeah.
We didn't go to a haunted school.
I know. Although there was like the legend of like...
Oh, yeah, there were... Okay, yeah. Just kidding. There were a couple legends.
Yeah.
We had the legend of the one girl who was walking through the tunnels.
The tunnels is what I'm thinking.
Yeah. Then there was the... What's that thing called? The cupula? It's the thing that like is above buildings. Apparently, some girl was having an affair with a teacher and, like, went up there, and that's, you can see her, like...
I didn't hear about that.
Oh, yeah. Apparently, some girl was having an affair with a teacher, and she went up into that thing, and she, like, completed suicide.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. So, apparently, you can, like, see her shadow up there on nights. And then, yeah, there's the tunnels, which you'll hear people, like, there will be footsteps behind you, or the smell of perfume. I think I probably have notes about it somewhere.
Wow. I didn't know about that girl. That's crazy.
And there are a ton of other stories, but I can't think of any. But I know there were a ton of other ones.
Yeah. All right. What are you talking about?
Today, I am going to talk about the Bender family. They were just a normal family of 4 living in the 1800s. The family consisted of John Bender Sr. and Elvira Bender, and their children Kate and John Jr.
Wait, what's the wife's name?
Elvira.
What a name.
I know. I think of the Family Guy episode where they go, Elvira. So the family was believed to be German immigrants, but no documentation has been found to prove that. Actually, no documentation has been found to even prove that all of the Benders were related in the first place. So a little bit about this family. John Sr. was about 60 years old when he moved to Kansas and spoke very little English. When he did speak, though, it was so guttural that others had a hard time understanding him in the first place. And he was a big man, over 6 feet tall. He had dark, deep-set eyes and huge eyebrows, which actually earned him the nickname of Old Beetle-Browed John.
Wow.
I know. He also had a big, heavy beard and long hair, which I didn't write it down, but they described him as, like, the crazy-haired man also, which I was like, wow. According to an article from the Imperia News published on May 23rd, 1873, John's real name may have been William Bender, but most sources say John, so we'll just go with that. John Sr. was either from the Netherlands or from Germany, and it is believed that he could have also been born under the name John Flickinger. Their names kind of are all over the place, so I went with the ones I heard of the most.
Okay.
And whenever I hear Bender, I think of Futurama. Elvira Bender was around 55 years old and spoke very little English. It is believed that she was born in the Adirondacks, go listen to our New York episode, as Almira Hill Mark, sometimes reported as Meek. Before she married John, it is believed that she was married to a man named Simon Mark, whom she claimed to have had 12 children with.
Wow.
She then married William Stephen Griffith before she ultimately got with John Bender. Elvira had a long line of husbands, though, and they all went missing or turned up dead.
That's like the lady I covered.
Uh-huh. So Elvira was suspected of murdering her husbands, but none of these rumors were ever proven, except Griffith did have a dent in his head after his death. She also had the nickname of She-Devil by her neighbors because of how unfriendly she was.
These people and their nicknames.
I know. Her husband and her son were said to also be afraid of her as she ran the house with an iron hand. John Bender Jr. was about 25 years old and described as, quote, handsome with auburn hair and a mustache, but also dim-witted. He is also believed to have been born with the name John Gebert. He had a German accent, but he was also able to speak English fluently. Many of his neighbors considered him a half-wit because he would randomly start laughing.
I mean, I do that. That doesn't mean I'm a half-wit.
But you have reasons.
Yeah, that's true.
Some people also said, though, that he did this to hide how smart he was. Like, he wanted people to think he was, quote, half-witted or dim-witted because he, like, didn't want them to know how smart he was. But we'll see. Kate Bender was about 23 years old. She is believed to be Elvira's fifth daughter and was born as Eliza Griffith. She was also considered to be attractive, with auburn curly hair and blue or brown eyes. She was fluent in English, but didn't really have an accent. Kate also claimed that she was a healer and psychic and went by the stage name Professor Miss Kate Bender. She would pass out flyers around town telling about her supernatural powers and how she was able to cure illnesses. She also believed herself, and her father would promote this, of her being the female Jesus.
Oh my gosh.
She would conduct seances and give lectures about spiritualism. In these lectures, she would declare publicly that murder might be for good, that others may see it as bad, but her soul might see it as brave and noble. She also promoted free love, which is fine and all, but it is said that she had relations with her brother and said that it was her right to do so. Because of her powers and popularity, the Bender's Inn became a popular location for locals, which I'll talk about in a little bit. Mm-hmm. There are other reports from neighbors of the oh my God. There are other reports from neighbors of the Benders that said that Kate and John weren't actually siblings, but they were married, probably through a common law marriage. And one source said that the two even had a child together, though they killed the child after it was born.
What?
Yeah. But overall, Kate and John Jr. were accepted in the community. You know, so we're good.
That's interesting.
For those who knew the Bender family and wrote about them, this is what was gathered. I got this quote specifically from Wikipedia, so you know.
Yeah.
But I thought it was a great quote. So it goes, quote, the old man was a repulsive, hideous brute without a redeeming trait, dirty, profane, and ill-tempered. Old Miss Bender was a dirty old Dutch crone. Her face was a fit picture of the midnight hag that wove the spell murderous ambition about the soul of Macbeth. Young Bender, seen when excited, recalled the grave-robbing hyena at once to mind. Kate proclaimed herself responsible to no one save herself.
Wow.
So this family...
That is wild.
So a little more background about this family. The Bender family was one of 5 to move to the township of Osage in Labette County in October 1870. I looked up the pronunciations of all these places.
Awesome.
This is about 7 miles or 11 kilometers northeast of the current location of Cherryvale. The Bender family and the 4 other families who moved here were all spiritualistic homesteaders. So like I said, Kate spouted spiritualism. Mm-hmm. So the spiritualist movement centered around spiritualism, which is a religious movement.
Oh, sorry, that was my oven.
Oh, God. Like more noises? So this religious movement believes that spirits of the dead exist and are able to communicate with the living. These spirits are also believed to be more advanced than the living and are able to provide useful knowledge about ethic and moral issues and can provide information about the nature of God. And homesteading was a way for families to pretty much own and operate their own farms. So John Bender Sr. registered and received 160 acres of land in Neosho County between the towns of Thayer and Galesburg. It was located near the Great Osage Trail, the only road that allowed people to travel further west. John Sr. built a 1-room cabin on the land, as well as a barn with a corral and a well. Elvira and their daughter Kate arrived at the cabin in the fall of 1871, and the 1-room cabin was divided into 2 rooms, being separated by a canvas wagon cover.
Wow.
So, not really 2 rooms, but you do.
Not, exactly up to code.
Yeah, right. The Benders ended up using the smaller of the 2 rooms as their living quarters and used the bigger of the rooms as a general store of sorts. They sold dried goods such as powder, liquor, tobacco, and sold meals, among other things. They also added a kitchen and dining table to the front room/general store and offered it as a place where travelers who were traveling along the Great Osage Trail would stop for a warm meal and could even spend the night. They ended up calling this inn the Wayside Inn. So that's kind of where the inn comes from.
Okay.
To help with the food, Elvira and Kate planted a huge vegetable garden and apple orchard. This garden and orchard took up 2 acres.
That's cool.
So the Benders had a lot of guests come to their inn, as it was right along that trail. Their daughter Kate drew in a lot of men to stay at the inn. They would see her when she was out talking. They would become infatuated and would want to see her again, so they would come to the inn to see her again.
Creepy.
This would also attract many people traveling along the Great Osage Trail. But mysteriously, a large number of people who traveled through this area began to disappear. In May of 1871, the body of a man whose skull was crushed and throat was cut was found in Drum Creek. This body turned out to belong to a man named Jones. The owner of Drum Creek was suspected of the murder, but no further actions were taken. Then, in February of 1872, 2 other bodies of men were found in the same condition as Jones. That winter, George Launcher and his daughter Mary Ann, who was believed to be 18 months old, left Independence, Kansas after the death of his wife and her mother. They were planning on heading to Iowa to resettle, but they disappeared along the way, never to be seen again.
Wow.
In 1873, the disappearances and murders in this area became so bad that many people learned to avoid the trail altogether. This trail at the time was also known for horse thieves and villains. In the spring of 1873, Dr. William York was traveling west in order to look for Launcher and Mary Ann. Along the way, he was questioning homesteaders for any knowledge that they may have about the disappearance and if they could provide any information. He had stayed at the Benders Inn briefly while he continued on to his search. He had told his brother, Colonel York of Fort Scott, that on his way back, he would be staying with the Benders one more time. Well, Dr. York never returned home. Colonel York, Dr. York's brother, was concerned when his brother didn't arrive home on May 4th, 1873, so the colonel took a trip west and stopped at the Benders' house. But another source said this all occurred in March, so it could have been March, could have been May, we don't really know.
Yeah.
There were so many different reports of this whole thing.
It was a long time ago.
It was. Yeah. It was in the 1800s, so. Yeah. He asked the family if they had seen his brother, as his brother had claimed he would be passing through the area and mentioned where he would be staying. They admitted to Colonel York his brother had indeed stayed with them, but that he had already left. They offered that maybe he got delayed or he ran into some trouble with Indians after he departed from their house. They offered to let York stay the night, so he had a full meal with the family and retired to bed in the front room area. While he was getting ready for bed, he noticed something shiny under the bed. York bent down to pick it up and noticed it was a locket, but not just any locket. On the inside was a picture of his brother's wife and daughter. York immediately recognized this as the trinket his brother always had on his watch chain.
Oh my gosh.
York then immediately began to suspect that his brother had in fact been there, and maybe this was the last place he was seen alive. York was the only one staying at the inn this night and was able to quietly sneak out of the house, so this was his plan. He would ride to the next town down and inform the authorities there once he arrived. He believed that he would be able to use his military rank in a way that would get the authorities to help him and take him seriously. With the plan in place, York crept out of the building and across the Benders' yard to the stables to get one of the horses. But he quickly stopped when he saw a lantern in the distance over in the orchard swaying back and forth. Like a man, York slowly walked towards the light to see what was going on. Through the trees in the orchard, he saw the 2 Bender men digging a hole in the ground, and next to them, they had a large object wrapped in canvas. Upon seeing this, York took off to the town to inform authorities. He was able to return back to the Bender house early the next morning, but he was not alone. No. He had been able to convince one of the town sheriffs to accompany him, so he arrived back at the Bender house with a group of deputies and townsmen. The men were going to search the orchard, as York had told them what he had seen the night before, but they were shocked when they returned. The house, the one that York had just stayed the night at, was completely empty.
What?
It was apparent that the Benders had noticed that York had left in the middle of the night, so they packed up and left. Everything was gone.
What the heck?
But then there's another story. So another version of this story goes, it starts off the same with York questioning the family and staying for dinner, but he didn't stay the night this time. He finished dinner and continued back home and with his search for his brother. Then on April 3rd, so we have like March, April, May, York returned to the inn, this time with armed men in tow. York had been informed that a woman had fled from this inn recently and had reported that she had been threatened by knives by Elvira. Elvira was questioned, but because she couldn't understand English very well, her son John Jr. stepped in and denied any such claims. York kept pushing, though, and this enraged Elvira. In a mad state, she said that the woman who had made these claims was a witch and that she had cursed Elvira's coffee. She then ordered the men to leave her house. I guess her English isn't as bad as she was saying it was.
Yeah, and she was born in the Adirondacks.
Right. The men noticed this as well.
Yeah.
As York was leaving, Kate pulled him to the side and told him to come back alone on Friday night, and she would give him a reading with her clairvoyant abilities and help him find his brother. So York returned back to town. This is where he learned that the men he went with and those in the surrounding towns all believed that the Benders were the ones responsible for all of the travelers who were going missing. Everyone wanted to hand them in immediately, but Colonel York had the voice of reason and said no such thing could be done until they had proper evidence. And like I said, the disappearances were being noticed and neighboring communities began to blame the Osage community. So a meeting was set up for Osage in the Harmony Grove schoolhouse. 75 locals attended the meeting. In attendance was Colonel York, obviously, as well as the 2 Bender men. At the end of the meeting, it was decided that a search warrant would be obtained and every homestead between Big Hill Creek and Drum Creek would be searched. 3 days after this town meeting, a man named Billy Toll was herding his cattle past the Benders Inn when he noticed that it was completely abandoned and all of the animals were unfed. Toll reported this to the authorities, but it took a few days for the township trustee to be able to investigate due to bad weather. So this is where our stories come back together.
Yeah.
So the house was completely abandoned. All personal property was gone. There was no food left. Literally nothing.
Wow.
The men started to investigate the property, and a chilling discovery was made when York went to the cellar. An overwhelming stench was present, and York noticed dried blood all over the dirt floor of the cellar. The cellar was under a trapdoor and was 6 feet deep. It wasn't a very large cellar, but still. The men broke the stone slab that was the floor looking for bodies where the smell could be coming from, but it was believed that all of the blood had soaked into the floor and permeated the horrible scent. They then legit lifted this house and moved it in order to dig and look for more bodies.
What the heck?
Or to look for any bodies, actually, that may be under the house. So legit,
Don't tell me they found any.
Well, they legit lifted the house, but there were none there.
Oh, thank goodness.
The men then began searching the orchard, and in the trees they saw 11 mounds of fresh dirt. The men began to dig up these mounds, and tragically, the first mound undug contained the body of Dr. York, Colonel York's brother. Even more mounds were found all over the property that it got to a point where some of the men found rods and started to poke them into the ground instead of digging. When the rods hit something, that area would be dug and another body would be found. Wow. More than 24 bodies were found on the Benders' property.
What the heck?
Which was soon nicknamed Hell's Half Acre. 3 hammers were also recovered in the cabin. So, of course, news quickly spread to the surrounding towns of the massive amount of bodies found on the Benders' property, and the family soon became known as the Bloody Benders. Search groups went out to find the Bloody Benders, but it seems as if they disappeared completely, leaving not even a single trace.
Wow.
So it was later found out and determined how the Benders would kill their victims. A solo traveler would be invited to stay the night at the inn, which would always begin with the Benders making dinner. And it wasn't always just wary travelers who stayed. Spiritual guests and seance participants were also among those who stayed at the inn. The traveler, especially one who looked rich, would get the seat of honor, which subsequently meant their back was to this canvas wall. A few times, travelers would mention and complain about strange noises behind the curtain during dinner or the seances. One man, William Pickering, even became so unnerved about his back being to the canvas that he asked to move seats. Kate got so mad that the man got scared and stayed put. But he kept hearing what he thought were otherworldly whispers behind him. It frightened him so much that he literally jumped from his seat and ran out of the inn. The room would be slightly dark, and Kate would perform a seance, making all sorts of manifestations appear, though usually her family was helping out somehow with these manifestations. These manifestations would understandably keep the guests transfixed and staying still, focusing on what was happening in front of them. So the person would be at the head of the table, the seat of honor, with their back to the canvas. At some point, John Sr. and John Jr. would get up from the table and sneak behind the canvas holding a sledgehammer. Ugh. They would then raise the sledgehammer, bringing it down on the unsuspecting victim's head, killing them instantly. One of the women would then cut the victim's throat to assure that they were dead. They would drag the body behind the canvas and take anything valuable from the person. This is when the body would then be dropped down the trapdoor into the cellar. From the cellar, eventually, they would be buried on the property. Truly a whole family affair.
Wow.
So Kate would draw the men in with her looks, charms, and psychic abilities, and her brother John Jr. would meet men out on the trail and convince them to take a rest at their inn and continue their travels in the morning. The family was able to keep up the murders and the stealing for 18 months.
It's like the movie, what is it called? Get Out? Or what's the one with like the crazy family and the guy goes to visit, like meet them for the first time?
Yeah, Get Out.
Yeah.
Don't give anything away if people haven't seen it.
Okay, yeah.
Go see it.
Yeah, go see it.
So during these months, they gained $4,600, 2 horses and wagons, a pony, and a saddle. So I was going to look up how much that was in today's money, but the article I read didn't specify if that was the amount of money then or like today's amount of money, so I didn't touch it.
Yeah.
Because $4,000 seems like a lot of money back then.
Yeah.
But the article was like, they only got $4,000. So I was like, okay, I'm not sure like what time frame we're looking at here. Later, bullet holes were found in the walls and roof of the inn, possibly indicating that some victims tried to fight back after being hit by the hammer.
Oh, gosh.
So the Benders had many, many victims, and I'm going to go over just a few of the ones I was actually able to find information on. Joe Sowers, who had a crushed skull and cut throat, was not believed to actually be a victim of the Benders, though his injuries were consistent with other victims who were the Benders' victims. Mr. Jones, he was found in the Drum River with the same injuries. He was a stonemason. There were 2 unidentified men who also had the same injuries. One of the unidentified men was believed to be Jack Bogart, which is like a Bogart found in Harry Potter. He was found in the well. He seemed burned, like his skin had been burned.
What the heck?
Ben Brown was found in the apple orchard. He was from Lancaster,
Yeah.
Pennsylvania. Thank you. And had a wife and a daughter. He was ID'd by a silver ring that he wore on the little finger of his right hand. W.F. McCrotty was an infantryman. He was ID'd by a tattoo he had, and he was buried face down. Henry F. Mackenzie was from Nobleville, Indiana, and had come to Kansas to buy land and to visit his sister. Johnny Boyle was found in the well as well. Boyle went missing on his way to a real estate transaction. He was ID'd by the shirt his wife had made him.
Aww.
Jack Boley was originally from Macon City, Illinois. Alonzo Sance maybe was also found in a well. He was a young Irish laborer and was heading to Parsons. His body was ID'd by his socks and teeth. George Lancher, the one I talked about earlier, and his daughter Mary Ann, they were buried together in the orchard. George had similar injuries to others, but his daughter did not. Some believe Mary Ann was either buried alive, as there were no marks found on her body, but other reports say that this just wasn't true. That she died some other way, but it wasn't being buried alive.
Yeah.
Dr. William York was buried in the orchard as well. He was ID'd by his brother, by his glasses and scars, the one who, like, the brother came looking for him.
Yeah.
This is his brother. Some sources say his son died with him, but most of what I read said he was alone. John Greer was also buried in the orchard. There was another unidentified man and an unidentified woman who were both buried in the orchard. There were also many body parts found and parts that did not belong to any of the other victims. So just random body parts.
What the heck?
4 other bodies of men were identified in the Drum Creek with the same injuries as the others, with the skulls and throat, like with the skulls crushed and the throat slashed. About the crimes, the New York City Times reported in part, quote, "Nothing like this sickening series of crimes has ever been recorded in the whole history of this country," end quote. The Bender family is believed to be the nation's first recorded mass murderers or serial killers.
Wow.
So as with anything, rumors started popping up of what happened to the Benders. Detectives had found wagon tracks, presumably belonging to them. The wagon was still attached to horses, all of which were starving, and they were right outside, they were all right outside the city limits of Thayer, which was about 12 miles from the inn. Apparently it was said that the family then bought tickets to Thayer for the Leavenworth, Lawrence, and Galveston Railroad in Humboldt. Humboldt?
Yep.
When they reached Chanute, promise I looked at how to spell to pronounce these. The 2 children, John Jr. and Kate, left that train and caught the MK&T train that was heading south to Red River County.
Wow, they were on the run.
I know, and this was going to Denison, Texas. From there, they went to the border of Texas and New Mexico and joined an outlaw colony. It is believed they went here because lawmen don't go into the colony. The ones who have never returned. One lawman claimed that he followed the 2 and reported that John Jr. had died of apoplexy, which is when one falls unconscious due to a cerebral hemorrhage or stroke. So I can pronounce apoplexy, but I can't pronounce other town names. Just watch, that's wrong. John Sr. and Elvira are said to have headed north to Kansas City, then purchased tickets there for St. Louis, Missouri. Some people claimed that an angry group of riders caught up to the Benders and killed them. It was said each member of the family, except one, was shot and their bodies were burned to completely erase them from the earth. Kate was the only one not shot. It is said that she was instead buried alive to suffer for her crimes, which is like my biggest fear.
Yes.
But another source says she was burned alive. The killers then swore each other's secrecy and never spoke of their crimes. But this story has never been confirmed. Another group claimed that they caught the Benders and lynched them, then threw their bodies to the Verdigris River. Yet another claimed they had engaged in a gun battle with the Benders who were killed.
I mean, all of these are wild ways to die.
I know. That group said to have buried the family's bodies in the prairie. So there was a money reward, like a cash reward for bringing in the Benders. So I think that's why all these different groups said they had killed them. But it's just so convenient they were never able to provide the bodies. So the reward was never given. Others believe that the Benders were able to secretively make their way to Thayer and hop on a train from there. their final destination never known. So do we know where they went? Do we not know where they went? Like, I don't know. Authorities continued searching for over 50 years, never finding a single clue as to where the family was. But on October 31st, 1889, in Detroit, 2 women, Elmira Monroe and Eliza Davis, who were believed to be Elvira and Kate, were extradited for their crimes. But the evidence that was used in the case became too confused and muddy, so the case never went back to trial and eventually faded away.
Wow.
In 1886, over 3,000 people visited the house that the Benders had committed all their crimes in, and soon it was reduced to nothing more than the whole of the cellar. People who wanted a souvenir from this murder house had taken every last stone. So now only memories exist.
People are so weird. Why would you want something from that house? That would just be bad juju.
But so many people came. The house literally doesn't exist anymore.
Wow.
So people who have visited the site have actually claimed that the ghosts of those killed are still lurking around. People who have gone to collect more souvenirs have been scared off by strange glowing apparitions. They have reported hearing moaning and keening sounds. Others say that it's Kate's spirit wandering the grounds, potentially doomed to roam the earth for the horrible crimes she committed. But in February 2020, the land that the Benders had lived on was put up for sale. I don't know if anyone bought it, but if you're interested, there you go. The Bender Museum was then created in 1961 in Cherryvale.
A museum?
Yes.
Wow.
It has an exact replica of the house, as well as many antiques and artifacts. More than 2,000 people visited the museum in the first 3 days that it was open.
Wow.
In 1967, the 3 hammers that were found in the cabin, the murder weapons, were also gifted to the museum. But sadly, it closed in 1978, but all of the artifacts were placed in the Cherryvale Museum and can still be seen to this day. So that is our kind of confusing and many different storied story of the Bloody Benders.
Crazy family.
I know. I would read one story and I would get so into it. I was like, oh, this is totally what happened. And then I would read another article was like, oh, this is what happened. I was like, wait, how could there be 2 completely different stories?
Yeah.
But I mean, the main killing and everything was the same.
Yeah. Wow.
I know.
And she had 12. How did she have time for all that with 12 kids?
Well, she left her husband. But remember how I said her one husband had a dent in his head? They believe it was from a hammer.
Wow.
And then I thought, I covered a hammer thing in Florida. And now I'm covering a hammer thing again.
It's more common than you think.
Apparently.
Wow.
So that is our Kansas episode.
Goodness, Kansas.
Place where you don't think anything would happen.
I know, right?
So, I guess follow us on social media.
We're not in Kansas anymore. Have you seen that?
Yes, that's sort of
I know, just making sure.
So what are our socials, Nora?
Okay, so follow us on Instagram at A Scary State Podcast, on Facebook at A Scary State Podcast, and
email us at ascarystatepodcast@gmail.com, and then rate and review us on iTunes, please.
Yes, please.
So I think that's it.
All right, guys, stay scary.